Welcome.
Hello and welcome again to another deep dive into the Phantom Menace. So this one, 4M3 Anakin's Great Victory. On the Ultimate soundtrack album, it's called Hail to the Winner. Differs slightly from the Q listing, which is, I think it was sort of in the public domain. Sure you can find it somewhere. So we're just going to have a look at this, and it's quite an interesting cue. It's quite a short cue, but there are two elements to it. Essentially, right at the end, we've got Anakin's theme, which has a very surprising ending, ending in a little quote of Darth Vader's Imperial March, which is fantastic. And then the beginning is a very triumphant, very typically sort of Eric Korngold-esque triumphant fanfare type thing. So it's all triadic. Just notice the trumpets here, where we've got root position triads, and then he changes to first inversion triads, and then to second inversion triads, and that's quite common. And it's quite a good way of just thickening up the texture with 3 or 4 parts, just sort of going up, depending on whatever the melody. Key relationship wise, it's an interesting cue because the home key is G, not really E flat, although it starts in E flat, but it then continues in G, and then it kind of remains in G really for the rest of it, although it takes some surprising turns. So we're using elements of the E flat major scale, starting on scale degree 2. And then we're in our home key of E flat at the beginning, with little interjections of violins and upper woodwind, but mainly it's about the brass. Trombones and horns play together, which is actually quite unusual for Williams, but it's such a sort of powerful theme that you kind of have to do it that way, I think. Yeah, we'll just listen to the first bit. There's not much to say about this first bit, really, apart from the fact that it goes into G right at the end, which I find quite interesting. So I've got Roman numerals at the base just to follow the key relationships, and then chord symbols up at the top. Just goes to A flat. And then it goes to that nice tertiary modulation from E flat to G. And then actually goes to the dominant G, which is D, but actually that's just a preparation to go back to G again. So it's an interesting one where he introduces G actually as a chord 3 in the previous key, as a preparation pitch, but also as a pivot chord. In other words, a chord that relates both to the old key and the new key as well. So we'll just have a quick listen to it. Whoops. And I went straight past it, so I'll try and go back to it. There are some slight changes, I think. That should be a quaver, not a semiquaver, I think. So there are some slight changes from the material that I had access to. But anyway, whatever. So it continues along in the same vein. With a brilliant descending bass line, which is with tuba and cellos and basses. Which goes back into eventually G as well. So yeah, we've got some sort of nice popular chords. So 2-7B. And there are lots of passing notes here. I've called those accented passing notes rather than try and think of them as chords as such. Really, it's just sort of C major 7 and then D. And then the orchestral bells. So another interesting modulation where we're going into B. So we were in G. And now we're in B. So it's another tertiary modulation, whereas before we had E flat, then it went to G, and then to B. But then he suddenly changes it right at the end, what I've called a phrase modulation. In other words, just starting a new phrase in a completely different key, which is going to F sharp. So not a tertiary modulation at that point. But notice the tonic pedal on F sharp. Now we're in F sharp major. And he does this extraordinary implied Italian 6. In fact, even French 6 as well. If you think of the A flat and F sharp as the augmented 6 interval, and then resolving outwards to G. It's a brilliant way of getting from a completely unrelated key, where we've got F sharp. He uses that as a pivot note, and then adds the A flat, and notice it's not quite a scale. Interesting, an octatonic scale. I hadn't actually noticed that when I did the reduction, so you learn something new each time you attend to this, which is interesting. So in B here, so it's strange that how to get from B to G. And he just sort of like, well, no, we'll just do it. And there's a big harplegis as well with the same notes. Now we're back into G major. With a very similar chord sequence and descending bass line again as well. So those are all really suspended chords where we've got... and it's achieved really mostly by the first point where we've got a G. Remember, this is bass clef here, a G in the bass. So it's a second inversion chord until the double basses and cellos come in as well. So we've got a pedal C, which is a subdominant pedal, and now a pedal G, which is a tonic pedal. With all of these lovely suspended chords. I've called that a sort of sus2, because there's no B in there as such. I suppose there kind of is at the top, actually. Whoops. With the trill, but it's not really overt here. We've just got G, A, which then becomes G. So it's more of a suspended chord on G. In other words, if you try and have a triad, I've got two options of suspensions. The A, which is a sort of sus2, can't really call it a sus9, and then a 4. So that actually appears later on, and then we got this harmonic imitation with the those little C to D interjections, C major to D major interjections. Classic John Williams suspended harmony. I love it. Absolutely fantastic. Notice again the second inversion. He uses second inversions a huge amount. With just very, very slight changes. Let's just listen to that again. And that then prepares us into the Anakin's theme in G major. So yeah, really, really nice. So I call that C9 with an added 4, which is actually 4/16, kind of. There are 5 notes in it, so it can't be that. Anyway, I think I was thinking of the C, D, F sharp and G without the E, which is correct actually. And then we got a D7 with a sus4 as well. With an add 4 because the G remains. So we've actually got that tonic pedal somewhere appearing in at least some of the notes, or in all of the notes, all the way through. And then it relaxes onto G. It's a nice way of releasing tension. And in this case, it relaxes into Anakin's theme. I'll just take it back a little bit. So that's the first part of Anakin's theme. Absolutely beautiful. It's such a well-designed melody. Because of its shape mainly, and also the depth of its shape as well. It really goes from quite low, and it goes upwards to a ninth, then a minor ninth. It's a really complex melody, because there are very few points of... the only points of stepwise melody are as recessive devices. In other words, relaxation of tension. So I generally tend to think of forward movement as going up, and downward movement is recessive. Forward movement positive, not negative in a negative sense, but recessive. It's receding rather than progressing. So we've got the progressive, recession, kind of a mixture of both, and then relaxation at the end. Really complex, that last bit, because it's an E flat 7 chord in third inversion, and then it has a almost an inversion of the upper intervals that we had to begin with. So instead of having a ninth from the D to the E that we've got right at the beginning, we have a descent of C to D. So it's still a wide leap, but it's still more recessive than the progressiveness of the first bar. The other thing is that, like Williams often does, we've got a classic chord 1, and then he goes up to chord 2, but he keeps chord 1 in the bass. It's the same with Yoda's theme. Sort of Princess Leia. I mean, a lot of them are very, very similar, where you've got a static bass and then a climbing melody. He tends to do that for sort of more romantic gestures. Or more sensitive gestures, should I say. And I love that F sharp 7 over G as well. I wouldn't have thought of putting an F sharp with E if I was just harmonising that melody. Yeah, I would have probably put a sort of A sharp, maybe a B flat. Something like that. I don't know. I wouldn't have thought of doing an F sharp 7 there. And I love that. With an E flat 7 over G. It's just such an unusual chord. And then we got our lovely French sixths. And in this case, there's a nice little suspension, 4/3 suspension over the G. When I say 4/3, I mean the C is 4 notes above the G. And then it becomes B, 3 notes. And it's prepared as well because the C sounded in the same part, but in the previous chord. Then the second half of the melody. Almost identical. It's just that the melody notes have just changed up a tone. Instead of... It's just a very, very slight change. But it's a classic design of a self-contained melody where bar 3 or bar 5 is the same as bar 1, and then whatever the next bar is slightly different from bar 2. Because it's a progressive melody. It's something that climbs up and then it's going to come back down. And in this case, it does. It's just that the way it comes back down is really ingenious because we've got an amazing foreshadowing reference to Darth Vader's absolutely fantastic right at the end. He just cheekily puts it in there. I think that's just wonderful. Brilliant. What a lovely melody. And a lovely cue as well. It's a sort of, definitely, as I said before, a cue of 2 halves. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed that. Slightly shortened video today, but hope you have still enjoyed it, and see you next time.